Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Blazer Metrics. This is Nate Bishop coming to you live with TB Pup, otherwise known as Larry. Larry, thank you for joining from, where are you now, Vegas?
Back in Las Vegas for a couple more days. This is the last one. Last part of the World Series session.
So Larry's on his phone, so this is, not obviously not great, but we definitely wanted to jump on because some very large news broke today. I'm sure everyone's aware of it at this point because it is everywhere. But Damian Lillard was finally traded, but thankfully not to the Miami Heat, which is a pleasant surprise, but also not to the Raptors, not to the Sixers, not to, who else was thrown out there? The Clippers. He's going to the Milwaukee Bucks, which was a big surprise, honestly. I've been trying to listen to as much as I can today, and I've already listened to, 4 or 5 different podcasts, local guys, national guys. Nobody saw this coming. Sean Highkin was saying sorry, go ahead, Larry.
It it was mentioned, and I can't remember where I saw it. It was just very brief that Milwaukee might be at least interested, or maybe they had reached out or something. It was in the smallest of blurbs of all the teams out there. And then someone speculated, well, if it was, it would almost have to be Jrue, but they'd like, well, I don't see that happening. Jrue is so much a part of that team. I saw it, I think, twice, and just the briefest of blurbs. But yeah, this hit everybody pretty much by surprise. I think Spears had come out saying that Toronto was the front runner, that Miami there just really hadn't been much in terms of talks. And that was it. I mean, some other teams were speculated, but yeah, the Bucks was not really one that, if anything, some teams were thinking, well, if we wait, we might get Giannis next year. He might go elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going anywhere.
Yeah. It's funny though. I was listening to Sean Highkin and Eric Gunderson talk, and Sean said that over the weekend he had started to write several different articles for different possibilities. So he had started writing a Heat article. He'd started writing a Raptors article. He was kicking around the idea of maybe starting a 76ers article, and boom, out of left field, here come the Milwaukee Bucks. So, just to kind of like recap the trade really quick for everyone. So, the Blazers get Jrue Holiday, DeAndre Ayton from the Suns, Toumani Camara from the Suns, a 2029 first-round pick unprotected from the Bucks, and then pick swaps in 2028 and 2030 from the Bucks that is unprotected. The Blazers send out Dame, Nurk, Keon Johnson, Nasir Little. So Dame's obviously going to the Bucks. Nurk, Keon, and Nas are going to the Suns, and then the Bucks are also sending out Grayson Allen to the Suns. So, just like right off the bat, I just want to say that the Ayton deal to me was amazing. Like, this is probably Joe Cronin's best trade, just that portion of it, because getting Ayton for Nurkic and some scrubs is, no picks, nobody that's part of our core. That's a steal. Like that could have been done on its own, realistically. I mean, I guess Grayson Allen went, but we've been hearing rumors about this trade happening for weeks, maybe longer, and so getting Ayton for that was fantastic. The Bucks deal is incomplete to me because there's
Incomplete. It's not the wrong.
yeah, Drew's not sticking around. There's no way. So until he is dealt,
Well, he may stick around for a little bit. I think they would. I think they would like to move him. Just some people I've talked to that they would like to move him, but apparently it's not. They don't feel like they just have to. Because now that the trade's announced, I believe they can only trade him in a 1-for-1. It can't be an aggregated trade. So whoever you trade him for, it's got to be a large salary. It's not going to be a good player, so it's got to be a salary dump. Therefore, that team has to have picks. that they could include, or there has to be a secondary trade with something else where they're sending back some pieces for something we have, and we don't have a lot left to move for cheap, inexpensive player, rookie contract types. So it's either somebody that's got a similar salary that has draft picks, access to draft picks, either their own or someone else's, or there's another trade following it, or he's gonna mentor Scoot for a couple of months, and then he'll move on when some things can be aggregated on one side or the other.
So
So
I did pose the question to our friends at the Rip City 2 forum about kind of what are the rules about trading Jrue at this point. And multiple people have said, who I trust, that we can't pair anyone from the Blazers with Jrue, but we can take back multiple players in return. It's just that the salaries have to match. So that does open things up, and that's what I thought it was, but I'm not even sure where to find that in the South. I mean, the CBA is such a huge document that trying to figure out that one particular rule is
well, and if we can only trade him, but we can take back multiple players, then obviously that makes it easier. And salary cap's not my. I used to know it frontwards and backwards. I don't anymore. So if we can do that, that's great, and
yeah.
that certainly helps. It can't be for more, is my understanding. It would have to be for matching or less. So that would certainly help, with some salaries and younger players and picks and whatever. But I didn't get the feeling that they just felt they had to do it right now. They will. He's not going to be here long if he's here, but they would like to get it done by whatever, Monday, Tuesday. But if they don't, I don't think they want to feel pressured into anything like, okay, we gave him up, because it's the incomplete part of the trade. I mean, it's like, okay, the Dame trade right now, until you find out what you can actually get for him. Which the ironic part is there's more of a demand for Jrue than there was for Dame,
Big time. Yeah.
because the limitations that Dame put on it. Jrue, shorter contract, less money, a more well-rounded player, not the offensive dynamo that Dame is, but he certainly fits in better with other teams that already have stars. They don't have to change as much as with Dame. That's a huge high usage guy that's coming in. That's going to change. That's going to change your team a little bit. Jrue comes in, sets people up, scores, can facilitate, certainly can play defense. Dame knows all about that. And he's not going to, I mean, he's used to playing off Giannis. He played off of AD. I mean, he's used to playing off of guys where doesn't have to have the ball in his hand all the time. So there are many more teams inquiring about him than there were about Dame. Now, part of that's because of of Dame saying he would only go to one team and then opening it up, apparently, reportedly in the last week or so, to a couple more teams. But I think Jrue fits easier on a lot of teams than Dame does.
Well, the other thing is, and I've been kind of saying this all day, and to me, this is a masterstroke by Joe Cronin, because Joe has just created an arms race in the Eastern Conference. I mean, really league-wide, but especially in the Eastern Conference, because up until this trade, you could have said that Boston and Philly and Milwaukee and Miami were all kind of in a similar place. They all had two good players. They all kind of had, weaknesses. There wasn't really a strong, just dominant team. They all had their warts. And
there is now.
And now you put Dame on a team with Giannis and Brook Lopez and Chris Middleton, and you're going,
And Bobby
Portis. That's a really good team, and a clear favorite. Not just I would say they're neck and neck with Denver. I mean, maybe better. I mean, honestly, it's gonna depend on health.
When they set the odds, obviously right behind me, I would imagine Milwaukee's the clear-cut favorite.
Mm-hmm.
I think they will be a favorite over Denver. I mean, Milwaukee was a very good team last year. They just Giannis got hurt in the
Injuries.
playoffs. Got
Yeah,
hurt, tried to
injuries.
come back, wasn't himself, got injured again. So that was probably a top two or three team as it was.
Mm-hmm.
Now
And
you're
now they're
losing
number
some
one.
defense.
Yeah.
Now they're number one. Now you're losing defense. I mean, as good as Dame is offensively, Jrue is about that good defensively from a guard position. So, but I think they've got players there that can help cover it. Certainly more length. Um, and I don't know how you defend a Giannis Dame pick and roll. Good luck with that for anyone
Well,
in the East trying to figure out now if one of those teams in the East has Jrue.
true. Yeah.
that that helps you out in a big hurry. It doesn't address the Giannis part, but that certainly helps address the Dame part. And historically, Holiday's done quite well against Dame. So whether that is everyone else fighting for second now, going, oh crap, we didn't see this coming either. If we don't do something, what's the point? I
Well,
mean,
and
it's there's a large chasm. It's like back when Golden State. What was the real point in the West, or maybe even the league, when you had Durant and Curry and Clay and Draymond and everything? It's like, all right, well, there's not a lot of drama here. Well, if the Bucks stay healthy, there's not a lot of drama.
but it's funny to me because Joe created this imbalance, this imbalance in the
He did.
force, right? But then in the same moment, he acquired a weapon that helps defeat it. So, he creates this issue, but then he can go to Boston or he can go to Miami or he can go to Philadelphia and say, yeah, Dame's going to be a problem for you guys, but I have one of the players that has historically shut him down and also an all-star caliber player. So, I honestly
Well,
think I would
an,
be surprised if they held on to him.
an all-star, a leader, a proven playoff performer, a veteran. I mean, he checks all the boxes when you're trying to, okay, if we can add a piece, what's that going to be? I'm not sure there's anybody that's available that's checking more boxes than he is, and he's available.
And he's on a
Now, is
decent
it now
contract,
or is it
right?
he's on a decent contract and it's not that it's two year 1+1 or whatever it is? There's going to be a lot of teams going, uh, if not now, as the season goes on a couple months and we figure out who is who, what's okay, this is a contender, this isn't. I, what would he look like in New Orleans?
Yeah, that's one team that's been thrown. I mean, I've heard so many different teams. I mean, Boston, Philly, New York, Miami, Chicago. I mean, really every team that's even possibly thrown into the conversation about contending that needs a point guard that needs and so I think
Ironically, go ahead.
I know that we were saying like maybe they might hold on to him, but I really could see one of these teams panicking and saying, I've got to get Jrue. And I don't want to potentially wait until the deadline and have someone else swoop in, because clearly Joe is willing to wait. I mean, that's what he's shown in the last 3 months, is that he is willing to wait for a deal that he is happy with. And he
And
did.
I think they would like that deal to be now, but again,
Yeah.
I don't think it's a big rush. Ironically, I think Holiday may fit Miami, if we go back to Miami, better than Dame did, because I think he fits in a little more seamlessly with Butler and Bam. He's certainly a Heat culture kind of guy, defense and just veteran. He fits that mold to me better than Dame does. And now whatever they're offering, which wasn't enough for Dame, well, maybe that is enough for Jrue. And so if we ended up getting filler, a couple of young players, a couple of picks, in the almost a decade from now or whatever, well, Okay, then you add that to the one you got from Milwaukee. There's your extra first round pick. It was always about, well, we want three. Well, there's your three. You got one from Milwaukee. You got a couple from, if it is Miami, and that makes them a really good team. I don't know how they guard that, and if they have enough scorers to keep up with Milwaukee, but it's certainly a lot closer than what it is now. Right now, I think they would get steamrolled.
I think the problem is that you're 100% right. He fits their culture, and he would be great as a defender for them. But I think a big weakness for Miami that I've heard is that they just did not have that number one option. Like Jimmy Butler is a fantastic number two, and Bam is not a scorer, not a primary scorer. So adding Dame to Bam and Jimmy gave them that guy that can just put the team on his back, hit clutch shots, like spread the floor. They just didn't have that, and I don't think Jrue really fits that hole. But what is their choice? I mean, and I want to get kind of the Miami thing out of the way right now because I think this is a good time to talk about it. So they've pissed off Tyler Hero. I mean, Hero has been kicked around for months now. So what? They're just gonna bring him in and be like, well, I guess it didn't work out. Hey Tyler. So I could see them saying, all right, Tyler, same deal that was offered 3 months ago. Tyler Hero, filler, Jovic, couple picks. I mean, to me, that's fair. I mean, I would even accept, like Lowry, Jovic, couple picks. I think, but they don't.
Right.
I mean, what do they have? What other options do they have? I mean, there's no other superstars on the market right now. Jimmy's getting old. I mean, if they're going to try to make another run, who else is out there? I mean, now Giannis probably won't be on the market anytime soon.
Yeah, that's at least a couple of years. You would think they're going to try that, and so that's going to take him through maybe into his next contract.
Yeah, maybe Embiid.
I don't know. Well, and they played. Listen, they played hardball and lost, and maybe they're fine with that. There's already some backtracking. Well, we can keep our players, and Hero is actually going to be really good, and we can let Jovic and Hawkes develop, and Duncan Robinson's going to return to what he was. Now it's all the backtracking. Well, it's no big deal. We didn't want him anyhow. Well, fine.
They're pissed.
They say whatever they want.
They are so mad.
But most people. Well, Toronto's not overly thrilled either because once again, I mean, they lost Lowry for nothing. They've lost Van Vliet for nothing, and
they might lose OG. Yeah.
If I keep having to fight with Scotty Barnes for time, I would prefer to go elsewhere. They don't have a lot of time, but Masai just keeps holding on to these guys like he's only going to trade them for prime Michael Jordan. It's like, okay, but those guys got you to what last year? Number 9 play-in spot last year. I mean, it was.
Yeah.
Now, funny enough, I think they were only one spot behind Miami. It's not like Miami was this juggernaut. They got hot at the right time. Caleb Martin was incredible in the playoffs.
People got hurt on other teams,
People got hurt. Tatum got hurt. The Knicks, I didn't think were ever really a threat. So, okay, fine. And they made it. Now they got gentlemen swept in the finals. They were never in the same ballpark as Denver. But credit where credit is due. They made it. But they got a lot of breaks, and it's not like they were a top 1 or 2 seed. They were down there with Toronto. So
yeah, it's interesting to me that both Miami and Toronto, if you believe the reports that have come out, one report today said that the Raptors were unwilling to make OG available. So, I mean, I don't know what the offer was then. Grady Dick and filler and maybe one pick. I mean, it sounds embarrassing. And then Miami.
Well, the problem it would have had to be a lot of filler because if you take out OG's contract, it's got to be 4 or 5 players of filler and
Uh,
maybe some future picks. They didn't have picks either, and maybe they count Grady Dick as a. They're like, well, that's one pick because he was just drafted, but it would have taken Boucher and Grant and
Gary Trent.
Thaddeus
It would have
Young
been.
and
I'll tell you. I can even look at it just for the fun of guessing.
Otto Porter. It would have taken a bunch.
I would say the trade probably was Gary Trent, who makes 18 and a half. Boucher, that brings you up to 30, so you need another 15. Thad Young is 8. And then Grady Dick, that puts you at 42.8.
That's close
So,
enough.
yeah, so that's probably close enough. So that was probably the offer. Grady Dick, Gary Trent, Boucher, Thad Young, and then,
Sure,
whatever.
but they're going to have to throw in a couple picks with that because that's a whole bunch of nothing.
And that's just it.
That,
It's like he
that's like
thought.
Miami's deal.
I don't know how much longer Toronto can let that guy just coast on winning a championship. Like, he's not doing them any favors. I really don't see things improving because they're staying just good enough where they're not really getting good picks, but they're bad enough that they're either barely making the playoffs or they're not making the playoffs. And
Well, and Portland, Olshey did this too. He kept letting players go for nothing. He didn't get any assets out of them. So, and that's what you lose. You lost Lowry, you lost Van Vliet for zero,
yeah,
nothing.
yeah,
Well, okay, you lose OG for nothing, and I don't think they will, but there's a possibility. Man, how do you replace that when they don't have their own control of many of their own picks or enough of them to make a move, and they're stuck in that kind of purgatory land when they do have some good players. They do have some good players, but they're not. Masai's not willing to take a swing. Whether that's because maybe he's married to his guys like Olshey was. I don't know.
but like they're so average though because okay, Pascal was really good last year, but OG averaged 16.8 points, 5 rebounds, 14.6 per. Like, I mean, Scotty Barnes, 15 points, 6 rebounds, 4.8 assists, 15.5 per. I mean, they're good,
Well,
and they
and Scotty Barnes, brutal shooting from 29%, I think 28,
yeah, he's
29.
not. That guy's not a number one. Like, I would have not been opposed to having him on our team, but he's not a first option. The guy is just not built that way.
No, at least not yet for sure. I mean, he's got a lot of potential, but he's got to grow into it. And last year was a stagnant year. He wasn't didn't improve. In fact, he fell back a little bit in his efficiency. Numbers were about the same. His points per game, I think, were exactly the same. But his efficiency fell back. His shooting, from everywhere except the free throw line, fell back. And so it's like, well, they won't include him, which I thought would have been the natural thing. If you really wanted to go for a title, you include him because
Yep.
OG is more ready to compete for a title than Barnes is. Now I get the future of it, but if you're going all in for a title, go all in. Don't cost yourself a title because you wouldn't give up someone who wasn't ready yet. Well, they didn't want to give up anybody, so it's like, well, okay, then now you're buried. I mean, you have no shot. Milwaukee's going to go in and probably just destroy
Stomp
teams
them.
like that.
Yeah. No, Toronto's in the bad way that we were in. Just kind of looking at their roster, they have some talented guys, but they're on the treadmill. They are squarely on the treadmill. And Miami, they have such a short window. I just don't, so the reports that came out in the last couple of days were that essentially they made an offer in July, like right when Dame made his trade demand. They said, okay, Tyler Hero, filler, and like 2 picks. Like I don't even think they offered one of the young guys. And Joe was like, nah. And then they never called again in the last 3 months. They haven't called a single time. And
well, if you believe the media out of Miami, which has been just embarrassingly bad, and pretty much everyone across the country agrees with that. Of course, not the people in Miami, but it has been brutal. I mean, they're saying, well, Portland was refusing. No, they weren't refusing. Everyone knew what Miami had. They could throw in everything they wanted. It wasn't a great offer. The ironic part about this is we have Ayton now is that there are reports that Phoenix had offered Ayton to the Blazers earlier, and Dame didn't like that. And he's like, no, I don't. He preferred Nurkic over Ayton as long as he was here. Well, now he's it got announced he was going to be gone. They revisited that right away. And listen, Phoenix got some much needed depth out of it.
Oh yeah.
And if it's not Ayton's potentially the best player, but he hasn't been that yet. I mean, there's times he's been really good. He's really faded out to the perimeter more. He's not around the glass as much as he used to be, but he finishes well at the rim. He can put up numbers when he's engaged, but there was something that was just off there, and maybe a new destination helps him get a bit of a reboot. For them, Nurkic fills a good role because he's not going to demand the touches that Ayton wanted. That helps them out. I really hope Little is finally healthy because if he is, he can contribute, but that's really held him back. Keon, I don't know what's going to happen. He might get cut.
I heard they might cut him. I mean, that's not surprising. Maybe he can go to some crappy team and get some minutes. I mean, it's funny because the Blazers are a crappy team, but he's not getting any minutes here. So,
well, he's got to figure out what he is, and he's too small to be a shooting guard. Doesn't shoot well enough to be a shooting guard. Can't play point guard. He's really just a slasher. And it's like, well, you're a 6'3", 6'3.5" athletic slasher, but what else do you do? There's not enough time, on the floor for him. So that's who knows what happens with that. I hope he finds a place somewhere.
I did want to say though, because I've heard a lot of people from the Heat side of things being like, "Oh, this deal's crap. It's not as good as what the Heat offered," and blah 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 blah. And it's interesting to me because they're saying, well, if you take out Ayton, which I guess fine, all right, Grayson Allen was included.
You can't take out Ayton, and we got an all-star, a defensive monster, an all-star, a guy with a ring. Miami wasn't offering anything like that.
No. Well, Lowry was at one point an all-star and has a ring, but that was like another lifetime ago. But just the other thing I want to say, though, is just the picks alone, okay? I'm sorry. Like, okay, Miami's offering 2 picks. Great. I would much rather have Milwaukee's picks. Not just the one unprotected pick, but the 2 swaps because
absolutely.
So it's 28 and 30 are the swaps and 29 is the actual pick. By then, that's 5 years from now. By then, Dame is going to be retired. I mean, he'll be 38 years old. If he's not retired, he's going to be coming off the bench for some playoff team jacking threes. Giannis, I tend to think that guys that are
possibly the Blazers.
Yeah, I just think Giannis in 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, he's so athletic. I just don't know if he's really going to be able to pull a LeBron and continue to play. He's not LeBron and he's not Durant. And those are guys that are able to continue to play.
Right, and the reason LeBron's an athletic freak size-wise, Durant is a shooting freak.
Yeah.
Giannis is not as big as LeBron, and he can't shoot in the same universe as Durant. Yeah. So, he's a unicorn in his size and how he moves and stuff. But once the athleticism starts to go, we'll see how that plays out. But you're right; those picks, Milwaukee historically is not the franchise that Miami has been in its run over the last couple of decades. Miami will figure out how to. It's a destination.
Yeah,
Miami's
free agents.
Milwaukee is not, and so when Dame and Giannis are gone, or maybe they get traded at the end of their contracts to somebody where they can go somewhere else to a contender and maybe help out, but they can't be the main guy anymore. Those picks, I know it's a long ways away, but yes, I agreed. I'd much rather have those than the Miami picks.
And they don't have any
And
young
it,
guys at all. They have no young guys. They are all in on the next several years with Dame and Giannis and Middleton, those guys, because they have zero youth, and I don't think they have any picks. So it's like that team is most likely gonna, unless they somehow flip Giannis and Dame, if they decide in a couple years that they don't want to go for it anymore and they trade those guys for other talent, like younger talent, and try to rebuild. That's the only way I see them turning things around before we get those picks, because otherwise they don't get free agents like Miami. Miami has been able to stay relevant for, I don't know, 30 years, because really they went from Tim Hardaway and Alonzo Mourning to Wade and Shaq to Wade and LeBron. They've just kind of gone from one group to the next, and it's been like that for 30 years. So I just don't.
well, and Milwaukee's been able to acquire. They acquired Middleton, they acquired Holiday.
Mm-hmm.
They've got some guys, but that's because of Giannis. But once Giannis is gone, that's not.
it.
You got to remember what a lightning strike that was. He was the number 14 pick. It's not like they
Total
were,
luck.
it was a pick and they hit it.
Yeah.
He was doing that, hey, we struck gold with a late pick. I think wasn't Drexler around that 14 spot, that turned into be an all-time NBA guy. Well, they hit that, and good for them. I'm glad. It's great. The small market teams worked it out, and Milwaukee hopefully gets a title out of it, and Portland's able to reset, and down the road maybe they get something out of it. And some of these larger markets are just like, well, we can just sit back because we are who we are and we'll get what we want. And doesn't bother me that that's not what happened. And they didn't have good, the offers weren't that good. That's the biggest thing, and we won't know obviously until the Holiday trade is done, but you at least have a piece that look how many teams are calling.
Yeah.
How many teams are calling Tyler Hero? Hardly any. Miami's convinced he's the next coming. It's like, well, if he was, there would be teams lined up on the phone like there are for Jrue right now.
Yeah. One weird wrinkle, though, I'd heard some people mention that Jrue had said, and I have not been able to confirm this, but Jrue had said he only plans on playing for 2 more years. So,
Yeah,
and
I've
that's
heard that.
and that's the extent of his contract. So that would mean I would think he's not going to opt out of that last year, because if that's it, that's the most money he's going to get. So, I'm just curious what you think Jrue's value is, because he was traded for a pretty big deal several years ago, which I don't think he's anywhere near that anymore. But so let me look real quick. So this is what the Bucks traded for him. They sent. Okay. Oh wow.
I believe two of those picks are still owed to New Orleans.
Mm-hmm. Well, we traded one of them. Remember, they gave us one of Milwaukee's picks and we traded it as part of the Grant trade. That was like 2025.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think it was a 2025 pick that New Orleans sent to us, and then we sent it to. But it might be protected, so I'm not sure. Let's see here. I don't know. So this was actually a 4-team trade. Wow. Okay, this is a lot harder to parse then. Does it say what the heck they got? Wow. I really hate how Basketball Reference has this like laid out, because it's really hard to like read through it. But it was between New Orleans, Milwaukee, Denver, and Oklahoma City. And
well, it was a bunch. He's not going to get that much this time, but he is still worth a lot to a team that's semi-close, because he's a guy that can come in and do so many things. He's a vet. It's not like he's necessarily declining that much. He's just like, hey, I only want to play so long. I'm going to Barry Sanders this. I'm going to go out when I'm still really good. Knees are great. I'm perfectly fine, but I'm not going to run it into the ground. Okay, but he's still very good for the next 2 years. And if a team has a window like that and they think, hey, we're close, you absolutely go for it. You don't get that many chances when you're close. When you're close, you got to go because who knows when you're going to be that close again. It's fleeting. Things can change or other teams can change. I mean, look what happened today. No one expected Milwaukee to go out and get Dame, and now they did, and they've got to be the hands down betting favorites in Vegas to win a title. Well, okay, so things change. So now all the contenders in the East aren't so much contenders anymore unless they do something. In the West, it's probably still about the same. It's Denver, and then the line starts after them. But in the East, you've got three or four over there. So somebody either they do, and they're like, hey, this helps us compete. Miami, we were in the finals last year. This gets us back, puts us over the top. We're a coin flip with Milwaukee, maybe if that's what they believe. Then you take that shot because you're not going to have it much longer. Butler's going to get older. And when he's gone, as he starts to decline, Bam's still young, but Butler's a huge part. He's the heart and soul of that team. So when he's gone, they're going to step down a little bit. They're a great franchise. They're well run. They'll replace that probably pretty well, but they won't be in that championship window like they are now. So you either have to take a shot or you just go, well, okay, we're going to waste what we've got. We were really close, but we're just going to let it play out and trade off our guys. Maybe I don't know what you do because you either go for it or you're not going to be. No one's competing with Milwaukee the way they are right now. I don't think.
No.
Boston, they lost Smart. That was their best defender. Um, I don't see anyone over there that's touching them.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Boston could get Jrue, then and keep the main issue is that to make salaries work would be really difficult because they don't have a lot of contracts that they could use to match the almost 38 million that Jrue makes. So I don't know. Let's run through some of these real quick. So if it was Miami, they could do like if you sent him to the Heat to match the 37 million, you could do like let's say they don't want to include Hero, they want to keep him to pair up with Holiday.
It's Lowry.
It'd be Lowry. It would be they'd have to do like Hawkes and Jovic.
You would have to exactly. You have to pay to get rid of his contract because that's a bad contract on a player who's 38 years old. So it's Lowry, but now you got to pay to basically unload it plus get the good player. So it's going to cost a little bit. It's not just going to be a freebie.
That's pretty close. Those three players, Lowry, Hawkes, and Jovic, is 35.5 million, and Holiday makes 36.8. So it's 1.3 million over what those three players make. So I mean, if you could get Miami to do those three players and then their 28 and 30 picks, then you're up to 3 first-round picks, 2 swaps, a couple of young guys, and then Lowry to come in and mentor. So that's not bad. I mean, that would not be bad if Miami offered that. Or if you really want to hold their nose to the grindstone, you say no.
It makes them a lot better.
You say I don't want Lowry. I still want Hero. The only problem is that would be $4 million short, and I think Miami probably would have to get closer, right? Because it has. I
don't know if that puts them over the apron or not.
Yeah, it might. Let me see. Yeah. Here unable to complete this trade since they are now over the second apron. So they would have to.
So now has to be like within 100% plus $0.
So I don't know how you get to that extra. Like, who do they even have? Martin.
They'd have to. What's another small contract on there?
Martin would get you there, actually be over that, and we'd be getting almost 40 million. They'd be at 36.8 incoming. So,
which is fine. We have the room to
yeah,
do that.
yeah, that actually passes muster. That's a lot though. They were unwilling to do that for Dame. I would be surprised if they would do that for Holiday. But at the same time,
Yeah, I don't think is there another contract besides Martin? Because I'm on my phone, I can't look up all that stuff. Is there another smaller contract
that gets closer to it? Because Duncan Robinson makes a ton of money.
Way too much.
There's Highsmith. He's 1.9 though. That gets you to 34.7. Let's try that. That says it's okay. So it would be Jovic, Hawkes, Highsmith, and Hero and 2 picks. That might still be a little bit rich, but it would be interesting if you could get Hero from them. You could flip Hero to someone like the Jazz or the Hornets.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, so that would be interesting. Another option would be, I've heard the Celtics, and for the Celtics, the problem is they just don't have, they'd have to do Brogdon to the Blazers. They'd have to do...
How much is Horford's contract?
Horford's at $10 million, so that brings you up to 32. The main issue is they're like concerned about their depth at center, because Horford and Time Lord are the 2 guys that kind of would bridge the gap, but then they wouldn't have a center other than Porzingis, so it's like, that's tight. That's tough, because you'd have this great starting lineup. You'd have Jrue, Jaylen Brown, Tatum, Porzingis. They could toss in White, but I don't think we would want to bring him in. He's making $18 million this next season. He has 2 years on his contract. So you're at just Brogdon and Horford is at 32.5. That's not enough. Like, you need to be at what I said was 36.8. So you need another $4 million. You have Peyton Pritchard. He's making $4 million. I wonder if that would get you there.
Poor guy. He would just get buried here.
Oh yeah, no. Well, he's on a 1-year deal. You'd probably just see if you could send him somewhere else.
I've heard Boston, but Boston doesn't seem like it's a good trading partner. Miami, because they didn't have enough for Dame, but maybe that would be enough for Holiday, makes more sense. Toronto's is supposedly inquired, but they won't, give up anything. So who wants what they would give up? I mean, it's Grant or Trent and Porter Jr. and Boucher and maybe some future pick. Who knows? Masai just kind of like, we're not going to give up anything. We want something good, and we just don't want to give up anything for it, which is, of course, what any GM would want. But reality kicks in, and you have to give up something to get something. And so far, they have seemed to want to do that, other than once.
Another interesting wrinkle was maybe a 3-team deal with Philly and the Heat, where you send Holiday back to the Sixers, where he was originally drafted, and then the Sixers send Harden to the Heat to play with. I can't even imagine Butler and Harden playing together. Butler would kill him. Butler would kill him. But so Harden and Holiday make almost exactly the same amount of money. So what you would be looking for is you send. I don't know if Philly would send anything back to us, like 1 pick or something, but you send Harden for essentially the same crappy deal that we didn't want from Miami. So you send Jrue to the Sixers, Heat send us the crap deal, and they get Harden. So I mean that's possible. Same deal with Philly and the Clippers. Holiday goes to Philly.
I heard
And
the Clippers. It's half the old Blazers we used to have coming back. Powell and Batum, and it's like no.
yeah, that's the main issue is that, like let's say you send Jrue to the Sixers, and then Harden goes to the Clippers, and then there's just the problem is to make up 35 million. Yeah, I mean their expirings are Covington, Batum, Morris. We don't want Powell.
Which are
I wouldn't touch
well, we
Powell.
don't want any of them. We don't want any of those players.
No.
So, and I don't know what they have in terms of draft pick. The Clippers aren't a good trading partner. Philly's not a good trading partner. Boston at least has picks. Miami has
Some picks. Well, the Clippers have basically the same picks that Miami does. They have like 28. They have 2028. They have 2030. I think the Sixers are in kind of the same boat. Where
Toronto doesn't have picks. Well, everyone's got 28 and 30 available.
they've all sent them out. Yeah. So I mean, and the Clippers. I don't even know.
More interesting, somebody that has picks, it's Utah or OKC. Now, OKC's got more picks they know what to do with of their own, well, from other teams, and then Utah has their own plus a bunch of Minnesotas. Now, I don't know if 2 years of Holiday is enough because they're pretty young teams.
That's the problem.
But the West is kind of up in the air outside of Denver. I mean, the Lakers are ancient. Golden State's going to be good probably. Memphis, what's going on with them and who's playing, who's suspended over there. San Antonio's too young. Houston's too young. The Clippers are never healthy. I mean, the West is really up in the air outside of Denver. So maybe Jrue coming into a younger team, especially someone like OKC. They've got so many. How many players do they have on their roster?
Too
23,
many.
25?
Yeah, they have too many. They need to move. So that's the other problem is that OKC has all these picks, and those players are guaranteed a roster spot. You can't just right. So they have let's see here, just on the count of what Spotrac's giving me or Fanspo, between now and 2030, they have 35 picks, counting first rounders and second rounders. 35. You could build 2 teams out of all those picks in the next 7 years.
Well, the problem with that is a lot of those picks coming up, they've got so many young players, there's nowhere to put the picks. The picks, they can draft players, but there's nowhere for them to play because everyone in front of them is under 24 years old. So what do you do with them?
Well, let me toss this at you.
So too many players. They're kind of they've got enough pieces they could really go out and make some moves. Both if let's say they were to get Jrue, and also at the deadline they could
go
use some more and play and go do something else.
I mean, I still think Embiid's lurking out there I just can't imagine Embiid's happy with what's going on that team.
No.
I don't think Giannis is going to leave, but you still got supposedly they're thinking Donovan Mitchell's going to ask out. But just looking at what they have. So this next year, they have Houston's first, which is protected. It's a protected pick, the first 4 picks. But they might not be that bad this year just because they picked up Van Vliet and Brooks. And they might be like, the 10th worst team, but not like top 4. But they've got Houston's protected pick. They've got Utah's protected pick. They have LAC's no protection pick. So they have the Clippers pick for sure. They don't have their own pick, which is kind of surprising. And then 2025, they have their pick. They have Houston. They have Miami. They have Philly. That's like four picks in 2025. 4 first-round picks. I mean, they've got to start making some trades. They've got to start making trades. Like, this is just silly. So
there's not room for them to start paying some of these players in a couple of years too. Josh Giddey's
Hmm.
gonna in a couple of years. I can imagine he's gonna get a big payday. SGA's, his is starting this year. I'm not sure where he is in his contract, but he's going to be getting a lot of money. Yeah, you've got some younger guys that it's going to be a couple of years, but there's going to be a bunch of guys that want to get paid and a bunch of guys that are going to want to play, and there's not room for everything. So they would be someone who could do it just out of excess. It's like, well, we have too many we can't even use. Sure, we'll throw a couple at, and if it works out, great. If it doesn't, we can trade him on to a contender later, and maybe we'll get something back that's maybe a little farther down the road. They push their picks out.
So just looking see, the problem is they don't have a lot of big contracts. So matching Holiday would be hard. They have Bertans making 17 million. They have Dort making 15 million, which I don't want Dort. I mean, Dort's fine on a playoff team. I guess you could flip him, but they have Oladipo making 9 million, but you can't trade him yet, I don't think. But the rest of them are small contracts. They're all in like the 6-7 million or lower range. Because SGA is making 33 million. Chet is on a pretty high rookie scale contract, so he's making 10. But
Yeah, but his big money isn't. He's got quite a few years to go.
they'd have a really hard time matching the salary. That's the problem. So they'd have to send out Dort, Bertans. That clears 32.2. That might be enough, just those two guys. So yeah, supposedly that would clear.
But
So,
that would easily be enough from a cap standpoint. It's
but
just
then you
then
need picks,
what
lots and
picks
lots of
for
picks.
young players get thrown in to make up value. Utah would be interesting because they're farther along. I think they've got the ability to maybe even be pretty good this year, especially in the West with it being kind of up and down. And they've got their own picks plus Minnesota's. They're dealing from a position of capital strength as well. And then back to New Orleans. It would be interesting to see him go back to New Orleans. Um, he would fit in pretty darn well there.
The
And they've got a bunch of young players and picks.
the player that
That
I
might
heard
be an
mentioned
issue.
would be Herb Jones. Like if we could get Herb Jones and a pick off of them for Jrue, that would be fantastic because Herb Jones would immediately be our best wing. You know what I mean?
Well, it's
Like,
funny because Herb Jones was so untouchable, and now Trey Murphy's taken off so much. It's like they don't. He's passed up Herb in some respects for this, so now they're kind of battling for a same spot or playing a little out of position, and they've got they have a few too many people there. Jrue would be awesome on that team. That would be as good a fit as anywhere else.
yeah,
That in Miami, I think, best fit for him in terms
yeah.
of how he would fit in and impact a team. Um, it's whether they would be interested in actually do it.
I think
Well, do we go back to the Zion?
nah.
What's
I don't think.
Zion make?
I don't think the Zion's making 34. I don't think we'd want him. I mean, we're already taking, and I was going to mention this. Aiton is like a Bob Whitsitt move, and that's what I love about it. Bob was talking about this on Locked On, but he loved to go find guys that were kind of scuffed. They weren't perfect, and so they were kind of like in a sell low situation, like J.R. Ryder, and that's Aiton to a T, right? Like,
Well, Aiden, how much different is Aiton really from Nurk? They suffer from some of the same flaws. Aiton's a little better and makes a lot more money. So it's like, well, one's better, but one's worse. It's kind of the same thing. It's just costing you more for a little bit more that you get. But when healthy, Nurk put up some numbers that are kind of similar to what Aiton, maybe not quite as good, but similar enough to what Aiton was doing in Phoenix, especially I think on a per minute basis. If I remember what I looked at, but it didn't fit there because even if Ayton was as good as he could be, it's going to take shots away from Durant and Booker, and that's not going to happen. So he's never going to be as good as he can be down there. It wasn't going to fit.
So
Maybe he gets a chance here.
I will say this. First of all, matching it could be kind of tricky because Herb makes $12 million. You could throw in Larry Nance again for like $10 million, but this is one reason why we might end up waiting on Jrue, because a lot of guys right now that might be interesting are not going to be able to be traded until after December. So
exactly,
it just kind of makes sense. Yeah.
If they could do it, great, but they might just hold on to it for a little bit, mentor Scoot through a training camp in the beginning of the year, and then do it when there's more pieces available later and salaries can be aggregated. And if they get something now, they'll absolutely do it. But it sounded like, waiting a couple months wasn't that big of a deal to them.
Yeah. Yeah, but then again, they might be saying that just to like up the value. You never know. I mean, I feel like they played the last several months really well. They did battle through the media. There was constant back and forth between Dame's guys and other national media. And the funny thing another thing I was going to mention to you, I've listened to, I don't know, outside of the Heat guys, Locked On Heat podcast, everyone else has been really in favor of this trade for Portland. I have not heard any negativity. I mean, at all. And some of them gave him really good grade.
It had to be done. I mean, Dame had asked out, so you're not dealing from a position of leverage. The only thing that Joe had was that 4 years on the contract. It's like, well, okay, I can wait. I'd rather not, but I can. But because of what Dame had, limited the teams to, it cut the amount of suitors. It depressed the market. But for all the media and all the, Chris Haynes, and he won't report, he won't be happy. Boy, they're not looking good. And maybe they're just, they knew they weren't going to look good. They were just doing Dame a favor, and that's fine. But Chris Haynes doesn't look good in some of this. Barry Jackson looks terrible. This isn't me saying this is national writers saying that this stuff is like, yeah, they look just overall some of the Miami. There's one guy, and I can't remember his name, that was pretty reasonable through this, but most of the Miami media,
I think his name was like Chang.
Maybe. Most of the media has where when I watched stuff out of Toronto, much more reasonable, much more fair-minded, balance, give to get, whatever. That was just never. That was never Miami. At least the people who were making the most noise. So, Joe stuck to his guns. Give him credit for that, and it will be interesting to see at the end of this, and if it does take a couple of months, what really comes out of this. But the page needed to be turned so it wasn't just this big distraction at media day. It would have been every question, every game, all year long until Dame was gone, if he was still here.
Yeah.
Now you go. You the young guys. It's Scoot, it's Sharp, and
Ayton.
Grant's the old man at 29, 28, 29. And then some of the rest of the young guys, and go. I mean, it's probably the most athletic team they've had since 2000, 2001. This is an athletic. They've gotten bigger. They're more athletic. They're much younger, and they could have some cap space in a couple of years.
And short of like Ant, it's not a team of iso ball. You know what I mean? It's Scoot likes to run it, get the ball moving. It's funny. I heard that some journalist from LA made a joke on Twitter saying like, "Oh, how could the Blazers do Dame like this? Send him to a contender with one of the top 3 players in the league." and just a clear cut contender for a championship. Like how could they do him like this? No one's ever gonna sign with Portland again. And it's just like it's so funny. But then clearly that guy's tongue in cheek. But then you have Dame's idiot cousin posting on Twitter that the Blazers were just evil.
Yeah, and I think he got shut down by somebody because that tweet got removed.
Yeah.
But remember all the people who were saying, "Oh, players are watching Portland to see what they do with Dame." Oh yeah, they traded him to Milwaukee, which is the odds-on favorite to be the champions. So now, because we treated Dame so well, naturally the assumption would be now players are going to flock here. That was such a flawed argument from the beginning, and so was the one that Dame wasn't going to show up.
Yeah.
I just all of those guys were saying that stuff. Haynes, there was someone else that chimed in.
Well,
with Haynes.
You've got Aaron Fentress, who's beating off. He's beating off the Blazer fans with a stick right now. he's not. Hey, Fentress just has always looked like an idiot, but I think right now he looks really stupid. But
he doesn't care. He gets more clicks and whatever. But I think he would, go back to Chicago and enjoy yourself. It's just it's. I don't know. It's really poor. And so much of the stuff he was writing is just like, really? Do you really believe that? Or is that you're just trying to rile people up or get clicks?
Who knows?
It was just so far from anything.
It was ridiculous.
It was reality. And once again, it was a clown show. So
yeah.
Fine. It's not the first time. Probably won't be the last.
Yeah. No, like he's a joke. I mean, it really is kind of sad though, because there was nobody in Portland other than maybe I think Danny Meringue was really the only journalist locally that was reporting stuff. And whether or not you believe him, whether or not you like Danny Meringue, I listened to him. But he was the only one that was like, yeah, something's coming, and I didn't really see anything from Sean Highkin. I didn't really see anything from Fentress. I didn't see anything. None of these local guys ever break anything. It's like they don't have connections.
Bill Orem.
Yeah, but he didn't break. He didn't break anything either. So it's like none of them are connected.
No, it does. It certainly doesn't seem so. The players talk through the agents who talk to Shams. Dame talks through his agent or directly to Haynes. Fentress, wherever he gets his stuff. But yeah, local Portland hasn't really had that insider guy for a while.
Yeah, somebody who's like really connected.
You got to go national.
Mm-hmm.
And then the owners and management go through Woj. It's pretty obvious where people are getting their stuff and who they're getting it from and which sides they come down on. And didn't Shams have a tweet that went out? He had to pull back today because he got the trade wrong.
I don't know. I didn't see that, but I did see that he put out grades, and he actually gave us a really high grade for the trade. So he gave
us a really high grade. But he thought he put out a tweet that had it as a 4-team trade and then had to yank it back real fast.
I don't know. I didn't see it, but like I said, I haven't really heard any negativity from the national media about this trade. They're a little shell shocked by the fact that Dame went to Milwaukee, but nobody's been like, oh, Portland got fleeced. The only people that are saying Portland got fleeced are Miami fans. That is it. They are the only ones. They're the only ones. And I will say, so Aaron Goodwin put out a statement saying like, oh, Miami did everything they could, and Pat Riley and their owner and all those people, class act, blah, blah, blah. And it's funny. It's like, that's interesting because contrary to that, I think Mark Spears put out a tweet saying that in like the last week, Aaron Goodwin privately reached out to Milwaukee and to Brooklyn saying that things were not progressing with Miami and that Dame would not be opposed to going to those two places. So,
well, but to be fair, what could progress with Miami? What could they do? They just didn't have the pieces. It wasn't against them maybe trying. It wasn't against them saying, "Hey, here's all our cards on the table." Well, that's fine, but it's a bunch of threes, fours, and fives.
But they wouldn't even do that. I mean,
You're,
that's the
you're
thing. They didn't even put in everything. They didn't even push all their chips in. They kept saying, they kept putting out through the media that they were not going to bid against themselves, and that this is what they think is a fair trade, and then we hear that, like, basically that the Blazers never heard from them again after July. So it's like, what, they put in this offer of Hero and Duncan Robinson and 2 picks, and like said, call us when you're interested in taking this deal.
right.
Like, I've never heard of that.
And 2 picks. One of those picks is to offset Duncan Robinson's contract. So
Yeah.
really, it's just a
Yeah,
pick.
he's a negative asset.
So
It's just funny because
and not that Hero's a bad player, but he has no spot in Portland. So it's not valuable to the Blazers. It's not that he's. I think that's part of that gets lost in the translations. Miami's like, well, you guys think Hero's nothing. No, it's not. Hero's a good ball player. He's got no spot in Portland.
No. And they expected us to go find a trade for him, apparently. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
they
the Blazers job.
You can deal with it. And it's like, no. So it's just funny to me because it's like Miami is the person that walks into a car dealership and says, I want to buy this Mustang GT that's, costs a ton of money. And the dealership's like, well, you don't have enough money for that. You can't afford that car. Here's a Ford Explorer, or like, something that's in your price range. And so it's funny to me because it's like, you guys can't afford Dame. He's not in your price range. You could afford Jrue Holiday, and now, your deal might not have made sense for Dame, but we're willing to talk to you about Jrue. But, because I don't believe that Joe is that petty, that he would just be like, piss off, Miami, I'm never going to work with you again. I don't
have pieces. What happened to Miami fans, and this is unfortunate, is Dame named, or the agent, that's where he wants to go, and that's the only place he wants to go, and it's the only place he'll report. So Miami fans like, well, that's it. We're in. What we have is what it will be, and they convinced themselves that was enough. And I suppose it was, as long as no one else entered, no one else offered anything, and Dame just said he wouldn't go anywhere. But that's why the commissioner came out and says, you can't do that. So, okay, it got to where other teams were interested. Miami never had in an open market, Miami never had close to enough to get Dame. So it wasn't for a lack of trying or a lack of effort or whatever. It just didn't match up.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about this. If Portland offered, a bunch of scrubs and some future picks for Jimmy Butler, they would just be howling in laughter, as they should, because it's not enough. Yeah. Even if Butler said the only place I want is Portland, they would say, well, pound sand, that's not a deal. Well, it just happened to be it was the other way. And so they could have offered all they wanted, whether they did or not, and it wasn't going to be enough.
Yeah,
we didn't have the pieces.
We would have offered like Nurk and who do we have who's young, basically, that's not even that good. I mean, at this point, Chris Murray, Ryan Rupert, and like Keon Johnson. Yeah, just a handful of scrubs and I guess if you wanted to go apples to apples, we would have offered them like Dane or Simons and those rookies, and that would have been that would have been our offer, and a couple picks, and that would have been our offer, and
Simon's real equivalent.
They would have laughed at us, they would have been like, well, no, of course not, I'm not taking that. So,
and they should have laughed. That was it. So. It's passed. Maybe that fits for Jrue. I think he would be a very good fit there, and that's more in line with what it would take. And it's not going to cost him as much. It's less money. It's less years. He's not going to be, they're not going to have to pay him when he's 36, 37. Maybe he likes it down there and they convince him to come back and play one more. Who knows? He says that now, and if they're contending, he may come back. I mean, it's fluid. Stuff changes.
Yep. Well, Larry, we're a little bit over an hour. now on this particular podcast, so I think we might as well wrap it up. I think this is an exciting time. I'm glad that we've moved on from Dame. It's time to turn the page. It's now the Scoot and Shaden show and Ayton. I think this is a good thing. I think we sent Dame someplace where we can actually root for him. I could, if he'd gone to the Heat, there's no way in hell I would have rooted for him. There's no way in hell. But I will
No,
root.
but the Bucks. Listen, it could be an almost all Blazer final in June. It could be the Bucks against the Suns, and you're going to have how many Blazers? 6
Tons
between the two teams.
Yeah. Yeah.
You could have a lot. You could have Lopez, if Robin Lopez is still there, Dame,
Connaughton.
Myers Leonard, Connaughton. That's 4, and on the Suns you would have Nurk, Eubanks. I don't think Keon Johnson's still there.
Little.
Nasir Little. So that's 7 right there, and I don't know if I'm missing anyone else. That could be a fun final to watch. You're just like, oh well, look at all those guys out there. I recognize everybody.
Yep. So I think I'm gonna root for him. I hope he does well in Milwaukee. I'm trying to get League Pass this year, so I want to watch and see how those guys do. But I think this media day will be a lot better. Maybe they'll move Jrue before it happens, maybe not, but I think it's going to be a lot more positive. So I'm really looking forward to this next season. I think it's going to be fun. I think the Scoot show and the Shaden show is going to be a lot of fun to watch. So I'm happy. I'm glad this got done. So I think this is going to be a good thing.
So, well, certainly a big, interesting day. There was no way to keep up with everything from all the different podcasts and pundits and reports and write-ups. I tried going through it
so much.
And it was so much and stuff on the boards and there was there's a lot of guys made some really good points just on our own boards that we frequent. And it just I think there's at least maybe a little sense of closure, and now people can move on and embrace what is an exciting young backcourt and a number 1 pick. I mean, he's not a all-time changing number 1 pick, but he's still a very talented guy who can probably do more than what he did in Phoenix, just because ranking wise he was never going to be a top 3 option there, even if he was talented enough to do so. And here he might get that opportunity just because some of the other guys are so young. They're going to need other guys to put, Grant, Ayton, and Ant. There's probably 60, 65 points a game fairly easily. And then Scoot and Shaden and some of the younger guys fit in around that.
Yep.
And that's fine.
Yep.
It'll be fun. It'll be exciting. There's going to be a lot of losses, but what you want to see is, okay, is there some growth and development a couple years down the road? What can we add to this when either we have some cap room or some of the draft picks are coming or we're getting closer to them and we can use them as an asset? That's where there's some excitement for the first time in probably a long time. It's been pretty. We knew we couldn't compete. Well, now we know we can't compete, but we have a good reason for not competing.
Yep, exactly. All right, Larry. Well, we will be back if Jrue is traded in the next several days. Otherwise, we will probably do a show on what the roster looks like and what we think is going to happen going into training camp and all that. And so just stay tuned. But we really appreciate everybody tuning in. Appreciate Larry getting on, even though he's down in Vegas right now. But really appreciate you getting on, Larry. I think it's just an exciting time. So I couldn't wait to get on and talk about it. So I will talk to you soon, sir, and we will definitely be back soon. And thanks again, everyone, for tuning in to Blazer Metrics.
Good night.
Good night.